So without further ado, it is with great pleasure that we welcome a panel made up of Shad Maruna, who is Head of Sociology, Social Policy, and Criminology at the University of Liverpool, Gillian McNall, Program Director in Criminology and Criminal Justice at the Ulster University, and Katerina Zvirak, Associate Professor, Department of Sociology and Department of Sociology and Criminology at University College Cork in Ireland. You can take it away, Shad.
So much. I'll share my screen. Okay. Is that, can you see the screen at this point?
Yep, it's good.
Great. Okay, I can't see it, so I've done this before where I have two screens. So if it looks like I'm not looking at you, I'm turning over to look at the screen temporarily. Hello, everybody. Really an honor and a privilege to be here today. I see some familiar names in the on the list, and also some new names. So very happy to be making the connection with yourselves. Also delighted to be here with my two co-presenters, co-authors, collaborators, and we're going to be sharing the time amongst ourselves, but also trying to share the time with you all as best as we can. We're most interested in having a conversation, a dialogue, and less interested in giving you a presentation here, but we have to sing for our suppers, so we will start with the presentation. And I just remembered to slow down. Apologies to my translators. So let's see. Now, how will I move this screen if I can't see it? Let's see. Um, there we go. Okay. So hopefully that's changed to a new slide. We're going to be talking about some work that the three of us have done together. It's a project called Together, and North and South Together, and we'll explain that as we go. It's going to be three parts. We're going to divide it equally amongst the three of us. My part is going to talk a little bit about the journey, how we got to this project, what motivated it from a kind of existential angst point of view. And hopefully that will make sense here in a moment. Then we'll turn to a little bit of the context of education in prison and on the island of Ireland. And then we'll talk about some of the findings, results from the project that we did together. Very quickly, my own personal background is in a thing called desistance from crime, and a book that is 25 years old this year. Making Good was my first entree into this world, and was very much a traditional social science approach to the understanding the world of ex-prisoners, people who have come out of prison. It was qualitative and immersive, but very much a traditional piece of research. Since that book has come out, desistance from crime, a tricky enough word to say in English. Translation may be more difficult in other languages, but desistance has become a huge topic in the field of criminology, with many better books than my own in the years since. We even have a film on the subject. If you're interested, there are French and English subtitles for the film, which I would recommend if you just Google Road from Crime with French subtitles. But and this is where the but comes in. There have been over the past couple of decades, at the same time that we have made real academic progress in this area of understanding desistance from crime, there have also been discomforts in this work, and in particular around our own understanding of our own expertise in this area. And on this slide, we give some of the various criticisms, critiques of traditional research politics and dynamics that have emerged in the past couple of decades that we are very aware of. In particular, the idea of whose story is this to tell? Who's the true expert on desistance from crime? Is it the academic, the researcher who goes into the field and collects other people's stories in a way that may be extractive, that be objectifying? Or is it, or do the stories belong to the people who have lived experience of imprisonment themselves? And increasingly, one hears this phrase, nothing about us without us. The idea here is that although research like the kind we do and activism is important and to be welcomed, that work should not be done separate from the people who are most impacted by that work. So the idea is that we don't try in our work to give voice to others, but rather to help others raise their own voices, which they already very much have. Listen to those voices, respect them, and help to amplify in the research process. This movement has come late to criminal justice. As in the previous slide, we saw huge progress here, in particular in the disability rights movement and the recovery, the addiction recovery movement, also around mental health and sex workers' rights activism. But more recently, we have seen it internationally around issues of crime and justice, and in particular, the movement, a social movement that has emerged among the formerly incarcerated, also their families and who have lived with that incarceration as well. So we see globally, organizations like JLUSA, Just Leadership in New York, User Voice in the UK, and movements like FICPFM that have combined multiple organizations where their leaders have said, look, advocates have spoken for us in the past, but now is the time for us to speak for ourselves. We clearly have the ability to be more than the helpless victims of the system. We've seen this movement come to Ireland in remarkable ways, again, in the last 10 years. So and I have forgotten what Spira Nua means, but this is Gaelic, the Irish language, and one of my co-authors will translate that for you. To my regret, my Irish is quite rusty, but Spira Nua was started by the gentleman in the photograph, not the ugly one, but the handsome gentleman, and the top right is a formerly incarcerated activist leader named Damien Quinn, who has had a real vision for Spira Nua as an organization that would help to certify people's successful desistance in important ways. And we've also seen this movement in the form of podcasts, in terms of getting the voice out. The new media, so social media, websites, and so forth, but especially podcasts have been very good for this. And we've had two exceptional, hugely successful podcasts in Ireland. The Two Norries was started by these two gentlemen from Cork, and then the Lived Experience podcast started by Michael McCusker in Belfast. Have both had huge success in bringing the stories of people, formerly incarcerated, people in recovery from addiction, out into the world. We're also seeing this movement in criminology more broadly, and a strong movement called convict criminology, which has now been going for 25 years or so. And convict criminology brings those voices of the formerly incarcerated who are now PhDs in criminology to the fore. This is a wonderful Canadian journal that some of you will already be familiar with, the Journal of Prisoners on Prisons, who have had this vision of convict criminology before we had the term convict criminology. That who better to write about prisons than the people who live inside of them. And we're starting to see a new generation of desistance research led by people who themselves have been desisting, like C.J. Appleton in the U.S. I have a wonderful story in my own life. This is a gentleman in the photograph. I suppose your left, your right, who is named Paul, and Paul was one of the participants in that book I put up earlier from 25 years ago, Making Good. Paul was at that point an interviewee, a research participant, and we have maintained a friendship for those decades. Paul is now doing his own study, doing his own PhD on the subject of desistance from crime, and he's looking at very, very long-term desistance, and it's wonderful to have the chance to watch as that story, his story, has come full circle, and he's gone from subject to author of his own research. And this brings us to our classrooms, and we have also tried increasingly to live through this lived experience moment in our teaching as well, and have made efforts to try to bring our students inside to facilities in order to understand imprisonment from a lived experience perspective. And so I am going to turn it over to my two co-authors who are going to talk you through some of the where we've gotten to in Ireland in terms of lived experience education.
Thanks for that, Shad. Everybody can hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Perfect. And just to echo Shad, thank you so much for inviting us to speak today. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to the discussions that we have. So, first of all, and I really hope that there is nobody from Ireland in the audience who is going to hear me brutalize our 750-year history of colonialism in 2 minutes. But I thought it was important, we thought that it was important to just sort of outline the context of the island of Ireland, because it's quite a unique geographical site and it's home to two distinct jurisdictions. So first of all, Ireland is a country that has withstood colonization for approximately 750 years of British rule. And the English involvement in the region began with the Anglo-Norman invasion in the late 12th century, And it led to centuries of expanding English and later British colonial control across the island of Ireland. And in fact, when we think about prisons, many features of our early prison systems in both jurisdictions stem from this shared colonial legacy. So when did that colonization end? Well, we had the Easter Rising against the British in 1916, seeking to end British rule. But it wasn't until the Irish War of Independence from 1919 to 1921, that we achieved Irish self-government. And these conflicts really marked the breakdown of British authority in the region. In 2021, we also saw the partition of Ireland. So it was at this point that the country was broken into through the creation of Northern Ireland. So the 1921 Partition Act, Government of Ireland Act, divided the island into these two different regions, with Northern Ireland and the south of Ireland. And essentially, it created these different jurisdictions with distinct legal and distinct penal systems. And so Northern Ireland would remain under British governance, and Ireland became in 1922 the Irish Free State. Now, at this point, it was still a dominion of the British Empire, comprising of 26 counties. And it wasn't, in fact, until 1949 that Ireland became a republic under the Republic of Ireland Act, ending the remaining constitutional role of the British monarch and becoming a republic with full legal autonomy. Now, while this was happening in the south, in the north at the other end of the island, what ensued in the newly created north of the island was a violent sectarian conflict, political conflict, between the Unionists and the Loyalists on one hand, and the Nationalists and the Republicans on the other, which lasted from the late 1960s until the 1998 Good Friday Agreement. So really not too long ago. And this was primarily caused, the conflict was primarily caused by the lack of rights and equality afforded to the nationalist communities by the Unionist state. And the conflict had a distinct impact on imprisonment in Northern Ireland. It led to mass imprisonment, internment without trial, and highly politicized prison conditions. Prisons became these central sites of the conflict and shaped the identity and the operation of the Northern Ireland prison estate. And in fact, it wasn't until 2012 that we had a prison review and whole-scale prison reform to transform a prison system that was built as a site of conflict imprisonment and containment to a system more suitable to peacetime. Essentially, what we have then is two prison estates, the Northern Ireland Prison Service and the Irish Prison Service. And we have in Northern Ireland 3 prisons, Maghaberry, which is a high security prison, McGilligan, which is more of a low security and step down site, and then Hydebank Wood, where the Northern Ireland part of the project took place, which is Cure College for women and for young men. In the south, on the other hand, the Republic has a larger and more varied estate with 13 prisons, and 10 of those are closed and 2 are open. Thank you, Shad. You can change the slide. So what does prison on the island of Ireland look like? In Ireland, there's relatively little critical debate on prison and society. And public discourse tends to focus less on structural issues as class-based criminalisation, or the expansion of penal power. And as a result, penal policy often develops without real public scrutiny, allowing the underlying social inequalities in the region and in the criminal justice system itself to persist. And in fact, what we see in Ireland is this sort of welfarist disguise of punishment and of prison education. So, in fact, Ireland frames its interventions, particularly education, training, rehabilitative programming, through this welfarist lens that emphasizes care, support, and self-improvement. However, this can mask the fundamentally coercive nature of imprisonment and allows punitive practices to be presented as benevolent or socially supportive. And, there are definite overlaps with this in post-conflict imprisonment in Northern Ireland. But we also have these residing echoes of conflict imprisonment. We're still shaped by the legacy of that period of time, including persisting issues with paramilitarism and a system that was conceived and designed during wartime. Alongside that, prisons in the north operate under wider UK legislation and standards, and that means that local penal practice is influenced both by British policy frameworks and by the region's own distinctive political history. And kind of cross-cutting both contexts, so both sides of the study in this project, you have the neoliberal university, which I'm sure many people in this webinar also experienced. Both jurisdictions have higher education environments increasingly shaped by neoliberal pressures such as metrics, performance indicators, and employability agendas. Alongside that, in Northern Ireland and in the Republic of Ireland, we have this small country context going on. And basically that means that they're both small societies where everybody knows each other. And these tight social and professional circles can encourage collaboration. It can be a real benefit, but it can also inhibit open critique and anonymity for people who reside in prisons. Thank you, Shad. So just to let you lay your eyes on the two prisons, on the left, you can see the two prisons that were the basis of the Together project. So on the left, you have Hydebank Wood Secure College, and it is home to approximately 50 17 to 21-year-old men and 95 adult women. And as a side note, when I first started going into Hydebank Wood in 2005, there were over 150 young men and 25 women. And that's a longer story for another day, but it really shows how the policies that we enact can impact the amount of people that we imprison. So that's Hydebank Wood Secure College. And then in Cork, we have Cork Prison, which is home to over 400 prisoners, and it's a closed medium security prison for males. Thanks, Shad. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of prison education in the Irish context. So to give you a sense of what's in place in this region. In Ireland, both in the north and the south, prison education is underpinned by both local prison acts, rules and strategies, along with international guidelines from the United Nations and the Council of Europe. Despite the acknowledgement in prison policies in both the north and the south that access to education is a right, it's been highlighted by academics like Kevin Warner that what constitutes as prison education can actually vary from prison to prison and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And while the Council of Europe calls for a wide-ranging perspective for education, in practice there is contention regarding the quality and access to education people receive, with Warner suggesting that the more punitive a society is, the less likely there will be access to holistic education in prison. And actually, that's probably something that we'll all want to discuss together later, given what Frederique was pointing out about modernisation in your jurisdiction and the retraction of funding. But anyway, both the ROI and Northern Ireland have systems and partnerships in place to deliver basic to third level education. However, within education in prisons, there's often this really narrow emphasis on employment readiness and on re-entry readiness, rather than a kind of wide-ranging view of education as a means in and of itself. Thanks, Shad. So, to zone in a bit on third level education, since the 1970s and 80s across the UK and Ireland, really, the Open University has been delivering third level education in prisons via distance learning. And the Open University delivers a wide range of disciplines and allows incarcerated people to complete a whole degree within the prison setting via this distance framework. And at its core, the Open University has this charter that highlights social justice, educational well-being, and access for all people. So it has gained this kind of radical reputation. And it actually continues to play a key role in prison education in Ireland today. In more recent years, though, we've started to see these collaborations between third level education in prisons and BRIC universities. So that's how we kind of differentiate between the Open University, distance, online, so forth, and all the other universities, they're BRIC universities. And these partnerships can take many different forms. So we see professors teaching courses in prisons. We see outside community members mentoring in prisons. We have day release programs at universities. And then we have inside and outside students studying together in prisons. The overarching goal across these frameworks is to foster knowledge exchanges and to impact wider social change. And so some specific examples of these are University College Cork, where Katarina is based, worked with Cork Prison Education to deliver visual thinking classes that culminated with this great exhibition on Spike Island, an old prison site. And then Maynooth University, which is kind of in the center of the island. Geography is not my absolute best point, but thereabouts. They deliver partnerships with Mountjoy Prison, which includes reading groups. And then in 2019, which is where I and my colleagues enter from Stage Right, both UCC and QUB established prison university partnerships that bring outside university students inside prisons to study alongside prison students for semester-long university level courses. And both were the first of their kind on the island of Ireland. Thanks, Shad. So I'm not going to labour this slide because I'm sure that you're all very familiar with the Inside Out framework. So Cork utilises the Inside Out framework, which is a US model, which was set up by Laurie Pompa at Temple University in Philadelphia. And the key features of the programme are to facilitate this dialogue across differences, creating these collaborative learning spaces, providing transformative educational opportunities and experiences. It also entails this feature of think tanks. So when the programme was introduced in Greaterford Prison, whenever the semester ended, the students were like, you know, how can we keep connected? How can we still feel like we're having an impact? And so they formed a think tank, which provided space for collective action and keeping dialogue going. And that first think tank then developed a training module for others that wanted to replicate the Inside Out program, both nationally and internationally. And to date, 15,000 students across North America have done an Inside Out course, and instructors have been trained globally, including our colleague Katerina. And so UCC hosted the first Inside Out course in Ireland. Meanwhile, in Belfast, Shad is a close colleague of Dr. Amy Ludlow and Dr. Ruth Armstrong, who set up the UK model, which was found in 2014, Learning Together, a partnership between Cambridge University and HMP Granton. And like Inside Out, it aimed to bring outside students in to study with students in prison. And it has key features that are similar to Inside Out values and emphasizes both individual change, but also wider social transformations that can be achieved through prison, university, education partnerships like this. Learning Together also formed learning networks, and these allowed key stakeholders to come together to collaborate, share best practice, and respond to emerging needs. Thanks, Shad. And so I just want to give you a wee taster of what the two modules look like in both regions. So in Cork, they ran Inside Out from criminal justice to social justice. And it's a 12-week module, part of the undergraduate criminology degree, with 10 to 12 inside students and 10 to 12 outside students. And they're currently on the third or fourth iteration of the module. And it has this adherence to Inside Out methodology, and it covers the following topics. So you can see what takes place across the different weeks: pedagogy of the oppressed, pains of incarceration, social control, from crime to social harm, masculinities and identities, labeling, reintegration, transformative justice, and abolition. And Shad? And so in Belfast, we ran reintegration after prison. Again, 12-week module, part of the undergraduate criminology degree at Queen's University Belfast, with 12 inside students and 12 outside students. And it ran from 2019 to 2023, when Shad and I both very sadly, but also personally happily, departed the university to our new institutions. And it now continues under the great stewardship of Dr. Michelle Butler. And because, as I said, Hyde Bank is a mixed prison, it's run in different ways. So in year one, it ran with young men. In year two, during COVID, it ran with young men and women, which was like really exciting and kind of innovative during what was a pretty awful time. Shad was based in the university with the Queen students. I was like running in the prison between two bubbles with their own video links linking into the university, with young men in one room and women in the other. And then eventually we decided, you know what, let's just let the university students zoom in from their homes instead of all together in a kind of anonymous way in a classroom. So, you know, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times during COVID, but we kept it going. And I think we were the only classroom in the UK that did keep going. And then in year three, we ran it with just women. And we have, throughout those years, had this adherence to the Learning Together methodology. But together, Cork and Belfast, we developed this module, which we couldn't deliver like as like. So you'll see that there are some overlaps: pedagogy of the oppressed, overcoming stigma and reintegration, impacts of imprisonment, and also the effects on release, and leaving prison and desistance, gender and desistance. So we tried to keep an overlap between the modules that we were delivering during the duration of this project, while also sort of realizing the distinct needs that each particular module generated. Thanks, Chad. So just to give you a brief overview of the Together project, Shad and I have both touched on how it brought Cork and the north of Ireland together, Hydebank Wood. We generated this curriculum together. Now, that curriculum was informed by think tanks with former students thinking about what worked well, what didn't. Throughout the project, we used reflective feedback forms, classroom observations, and analysis of the artifacts that were created during the project. We sort of triangulated that with stakeholder interviews. Alongside that, we had an advisory steering group made up of prison education, let's say, experts and practitioners. And the aim is that we have created this all-island toolkit, which Katarina is going to talk about. We have an all-island learning network, and we're hoping that we've created something that is kind of distinct to the island of Ireland, which is quite important given the fact that frameworks that have been utilized in the past are kind of might raise tensions with regards to our colonial history. And hopefully this is a framework that can be utilized by anybody that wants to go into prison. So over to you, Katarina. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you, Shad. In the spirit of time, I'll try to be quick while being mindful of the translators as well, so that we have some space for discussion and questions as well. Then
I just want to chime in, yes. Katarina. We're going to cut at 11 quite sharp. We can't go over because of interpretation, so we'll keep that in mind.
I'll be very quick. You can look at our toolkit that we've produced as part of this project as one of these outputs online anyway. So I'll just speak you in sort of 5 minutes through the whole thing, and then you can read up on it in your own time or contact us with more questions. So the hope of both of this research project was to sort of really use the classrooms as sort of laboratories for really drawing out what makes this type of education different, and to sort of then compile it together with our students through sort of genuine co-production into what we call the North-South Together Toolkit, with the hope that other classrooms across the island of Ireland, across the 15 prisons that we have, both north and south, that they can hopefully sort of replicate this model to their distinct, educational contexts, and also to enter into sort of global discussions with groups like yourselves. We sort of designed at the beginning of the project certain sort of values and principles, ethics of care, a focus on social justice, an awareness of existing power structures, and also building on other programs that have come before us. And then we have distilled together, we can go to the next slide now, we have distilled together with our students a couple of sort of, I guess, learnings that they have observed as really beneficial from these types of classrooms, and that we have then, as a result, distilled into particular tools summarized in the toolkit. So the first principle is the one of pedagogies of liberation, social change, dialogue, and hope. So again, that you do not replicate educational processes which can be experienced as oppressive, particularly in a context where, in the Irish context, both north and south, social class and educational backgrounds are very much determinants of who ends up in prison and who not. And so we have designed this toolkit with that in mind. to really decolonize the classroom, and also use this whole exercise as an example to bring the learning from the prison education classroom into our university classrooms as a strategy of learning the other way around. We can go to the next slide. The next principle or finding was that convivial classrooms and co-production of learning really makes a difference to the learning environment. So we are borrowing from pedagogical thinkers like Ivan Illich, who talked about learning atmospheres of joy, humor, and laughter as essential to convivial learning environments. And anyone who will have taught in prison classrooms will probably, this will resonate with them. So we're introducing a couple of tools in the toolkits that sort of foster this type of learning atmosphere. We can go to the next slide, Shad. The next very important principle is the curation of an anti-oppressive syllabus, and we're very aware of that, given that both of our classrooms and the toolkits have developed from criminology curricula. So here we are in a sort of an awkward position. There's people teaching philosophy in prisons or mathematics or whatever, but we are studying prisons on the one hand as part of our day job, and then going into prisons, teaching the very discipline that studies people inside. So being very much aware of this, we sort of call this curating an anti-oppressive syllabus. How are we suggesting that this can be done? Again, a couple of ideas: grounding lived experience readings, emphasizing person-centered language, appreciating lived experience of both inside and outside students through various exercises, writing assignments and assessments, and so on and so forth. And really appreciating, we can go to the next slide, the diversity of inside voices with all their contradictions and complexities and nuances. And the final bit, and I'll come to the end now, is really the use of creative and embodied pedagogies. So to really go, beyond this division of the mind and the intellect on the one hand, and the body and the senses on the other, but really sort of uniting these two ways of thinking, arguing, and reflecting into our classrooms as well. And how we do that, or how we've done that, is through creative group work, where we collaborate with artistically trained prison educators for students to decide themselves which of the learning themes they really want to engage with in depth. So during the last weeks of sort of group work projects, so that they really become communicators of knowledge and not quote unquote just receivers. So this is how we're trying to spin this emancipatory pedagogy as much as that is possible in the limited space that's the prison education classroom into these settings. And yeah, we'd love to hear more from you down the line, and please get in touch if you're interested in this. And I'll be quiet now, and thanks so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Katarina, Shad, and Jillian. We'll try and figure out how to. You can stop the screen share so we can all be together. I'll pin a bunch of you. I think that's going to work. So if there are questions from the audience, you can type them in the chat, or just open your microphone and ask the question. Briefly, in the spirit of timekeeping, we will be cutting the webinar quite short at 11. Where are you, Katar? There you are. So if there is no question from the audience, I have one myself. I'm wondering, because it seems that the program, the people can join is quite short, and I'm wondering if once they have done the learning together or the inside out program, what is there else? That is there some kind of a passageway towards university or general course, or do they go back to basic adult education inside prison?
In the case of the south of Ireland, the Inside Out it's a 10-credit microcredit, we call it, when we are quite proud of having those microcredits. This means that the prison students as well get this course accredited by the university at bachelor's degree level. However, we haven't yet found a way how to feed that into further third level education. And
Okay.
this speaks to the challenge that Gillian talked about. We are a very small island, and a lot of our students are in parallel with doing this course, just finishing, for example, their high school education. Some of them are doing prison open university, so other higher ed. So this is very much complementary to their other courses rather than a sort of a stream on its own. And this is something we'd like to develop and expand in the future, but we're noticing how difficult it is to sort of bring two very large bureaucratic organizations together, and prisoners are just a very small cohort for them, for our universities. So we struggle with that.
Right. Okay. We have a question from the audience. Ahmed, you can turn on your microphone.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ahmed. So I'm from Nigeria. So I actually listened very well for the introduction and explanation of everything in Highland. But I just want to confirm, just to know much about the prison education here in Highland. So those students in incarceration, while they are there, they are still studying. Do they have any provision for those who have not finished their courses while they are out? Can they still continue their education? And that's one. Secondly, how do they get materials for their research in school? Thank you.
So Gillian and Chad, you can just turn on your microphone.
Yeah. Gillian, do you want to do it, or me? It's up to
you. Well, with regards to materials, we have quite a fixed curriculum for both the inside and the outside students. So we do 2 distinct papers that we go into in depth every week. And so those papers that are generated over the 12 weeks, so 24 papers, that's the foundation that they use for their research. Now, we also do now group projects. And for group projects, the inside and the outside students work together. And the inside students can direct outside students to go and do research for them that they want to. Now, also to say that, they're able sometimes to do some searches, find papers that they want, and ask for prison education to access them for them. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. So I know that was one part of your question.
The other part was about after prison, I think, and we very much see these courses as a sort of gateway. We hope it's a taster to give them a sense of what a university classroom is like in the real world, because it is a real world university classroom with real university credit and real university students and staff. We are very aware that also, though, that we don't want to set people up to fail, that we've given them this taster. They've gotten the bug. They say, I like this university business. This seems fun. And then they get out into the community, and the university puts down the shutters and says, you're not allowed in because of your convictions. So fortunately, in Ireland, and one of the universities that was mentioned, Maynooth, and others, including University of Ulster, where Gillian is, we are making some progress in terms of admitting students with criminal convictions onto our university courses. And if they do decide to study with us, they will have this, although it's only one class, they will have the ability to transfer these credits with them into the class. And I'll be quiet because there's lots more hands up.
So the next question from Michael. You can turn on your microphone.
Hi. Thank you for this today. It's interesting being on the other side of this now, because I was one of those prisoners inside. I spent I'm 42, spent more than half my adult life inside. My last sentence was 10 years. Throughout that, I managed to get my bachelor degree, and it was not easy. There were a lot of challenges, and so now I am board president at Wisseskin, actually the Healing Lodge that I was a resident of for 2 years at the end of my last sentence. I'm a professor assistant professor at Toronto Metropolitan University, and I'm just graduating my PhD in finance at the Adam Smith Business School, University of Glasgow. And so I feel like we have a lot to talk about. Because I'm one of those that benefited from university education while I was inside, and so now I'm trying to give back. As I mentioned, I'm board president at Wisseskin. I've been working for the last 6 months or so to develop a prison education program at Wisseskin that provides experiential learning. And so it's project-based experiential learning based on design thinking methodology, and I integrated like a technological system with a local AI system where students can actually just ask it questions, and it's trained specifically on the material. And it's been a huge headache getting around all the CSE policies and Wisseskin policies and TMU policies around like access to technology inside and appropriate uses of AI technology and stuff like that. But I see this as a major opportunity to ease what will become a very real bottleneck in the system, where you get more and more people wanting to join these courses, and just limited access to professors who are able to volunteer their time to answer questions and so on. So I'm wondering, are you doing any work in that space right now? And how is access to technology in the UK or in Ireland? Because when I was inside, we had nothing. I had to do like, I couldn't even have a calculator because of the batteries. And I'm wondering what's that for you?
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that, Michael. And well done. Congratulations on everything you've achieved. It's definitely something that we've noticed, that we've talked about trying to do further work on digital equity. And I'll maybe let Katarina come in on that.
It's interesting, Michael, because I just had a master's student finish her thesis on this. There's a huge digital divide, as you can imagine, between our inside students and the outside students. And so as a critical criminologist, I can tell you that the prison is foremost about security concerns, not about rehabilitation or education. So it, like everywhere in the world, so it's these concerns always override education, rehabilitation. So we had funny situations where during COVID, 300 laptops were purchased for our local prison, and they had to be returned because the security, whatever, safe lines were set up and whatnot. But then again, there was security concerns. So it's something we're struggling with as educators, and it's going to get, this is going to get more pronounced in the future with, people needing more digital access when they come out because of how our world is changing. But our education is very, very, very analog for these sort of reasons. Our students can't even access Canvas sites or so on, where you could, disable chat functions and so on, which is, for example, possible in some American prisons.
But so we would love to get
just a note on
Michael. That would be brilliant.
Just a quick note: interpretation will now finish, but we can stay around for a little more time if you want. I do have to leave, so I'll leave. I'll let Marc-André or Camille take the chair. Thank you so much for everyone attending. Thank you for the interpreters for making it possible to hear in people's language of choice. And thank you, Jillian, Shad, and Katerina. I hope we can actually get together in a soonish future. Thank you, Michael, for your question. And I hope we can actually get together as well, because we work on with Bassem on another research project, so that we can actually talk about eventually. So I'm gonna leave now. You can stay around for 5 minutes or so if you want, and thank you so much. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frederica.
I would just say I hear you about the security, and it's something it's a brick wall that I kept hitting over and over and over. And it doesn't matter how good your solution is. All they have to do is say security, and it's a project killer. And if it's not security, it's privacy, and you get unions involved, and it's just such a barrier. But you can't have somebody 20, 30 years in released into, society today and say, like, who's never written an email in their life and say, go be successful. There's this massive disconnect between what these institutions say they're trying to do and what's actually happening. And access to technology is sorely needed. And it's like, we have the technology. Like, I implemented device level controls through Samsung Knox, everything, network level controls, everything tightly. Anyway, let's talk. I would love to further this discussion because I feel like it's going to take many minds to overcome this.